Welcome to the Fitness and Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Danny Kennedy, and I'm here to help you become the very best version of yourself.
Hello, I'm Dr. Peter Lewis. I've been a sports physician, but now I call myself a regenerative physician, which means I'm using PRP, an autologous treatment, that is your own natural cells, to heal people, get better outcomes. And we're also moving into the biohacking space now, where we're using technologies like wearable technology to get better outcomes and measure improvements from our interventions.
Dr. Peter Lewis, welcome back to the Fitness and Lifestyle Podcast.
Thank you very much, Danny. It's great to be here.
Pleasure to have you in again, mate. I'm obviously very fortunate and grateful to have a bunch of communication with you quite regularly, which we end up, every time we jump on the phone, I feel like we end up spending 5 to 10 minutes talking about something that's got nothing to do with why we're on the phone call. Yeah. But it always leads back to essentially the things we're going to chat through today. And now, I believe it was last year. I could be completely wrong. I feel like it was last year when we did our first episode, and we had a lot of really good feedback from that conversation on PRP, the regenerative health side of things, and we briefly touched on cell therapy. But I know since that first conversation, there was a bunch of feedback and comments that came through. But since then, there's also been, I would say, a lot more developments, particularly in your world, of the effectiveness of it, and some new ways of administering it that are starting to show some pretty cool benefits. So obviously there are going to be people who didn't hear that first episode. And so for those that didn't hear that one, that will be linked in the show notes below. And I would highly encourage everyone to go and listen to that, not only to learn about PRP, but also just to learn about the great man over here himself. But I'd love for you to kind of dive us into, I guess, an overview of PRP for those who don't know what it is, and just some insight into how that's kind of evolved since we did our last episode together.
Sure. I think the word autologous has got to be introduced. It's a word that means that the therapy is derived from your own body. So it's got all the beauties of being natural and safe.
Yep.
And our job has really been to prove that it's also effective and cost effective. So we're offering really an alternative to cortisone or surgery in terms of accelerating healing, producing greater youthfulness, well-being. PRP is derived from your blood. It's a simple process of taking it, just like getting a blood test at your local doctor's. And we spin the blood and then we activate it and inject it back into the area of concern. One of the innovations on that has been the cells, which allows us to process it more and then also use an intravenous delivery system.
Just quickly, I want to jump in. For those that are listening that again didn't hear that first one, the first episode, when you say spin the blood and all of these different little terms, which I understand what they are, what is actually happening in that process? So once the patient has had their blood taken, what is the process that happens in the centrifuge before it's then re-injected? Sure.
In the history of the development of this technology, some doctors used to re-inject whole blood. They didn't process it, just injected it. It didn't work very well, and it was quite painful.
I can imagine.
And it's painful largely because of the red blood cells. Red blood cells contain iron, so they're heavy. So when we spin it in a centrifuge, the red blood cells, which are really only involved in oxygen transport, they drop to the bottom. And the other cells and growth factors, which are involved in healing, they're the cream on the top. And we extract that cream and re-inject it into you. And because we remove the red blood cells, it doesn't hurt so much and the volume is less. So you always hurt someone because there's a fine line between pressure and pain. So if you large volume, more pain, smaller volume, less pain. It's more concentrated. There's a higher concentration of growth factors. And in fact, there's some stuff that happens when we spin it, which is that the cells actually degranulate, which means they release the growth factors, like indeed growth hormones itself, which is normally inside your platelets. That goes into the serum, so the body can then absorb it and utilize it. And it causes a cascade response, actually, when you inject it into the body. And some of the cells that are in your body, they also release growth factors when they're exposed to PRP.
Right. And so I guess before we go in, because I do really want to touch on some of how that's evolved, and particularly in how it's administered, because that sounds very exciting, and I'm keen for you to share a bit about that. Just a quick overview again for someone listening who has now started to hear of PRP a number of times, whether it's in our episodes or you're probably seeing it more on social media and whatnot now. What would you be telling someone who's on the fence about deciding whether or not it's a treatment that they think they actually need, or whether it's worth it? We obviously mentioned things like cortisone, which is very much so a Band-Aid, a number of these other things which people are probably a lot quicker to gravitate towards, mainly because they probably know more about them. So what should someone, what gets someone across the line, I guess, in terms of going in for their first treatment for PRP?
Look, I think the huge thing that we're seeing is a growth in sporting injuries. That's people, footballers particularly, with hamstrings, quad tears, calf tears. You can inject cortisone and that just suppresses the pain temporarily. PRP actually accelerates regeneration of the tissues. So you end up with healthy muscle fibers rather than just scar tissue. The problem with development of scar tissue is it's not flexible, and so the next time you stretch that area, it tends to snap in exactly the same place as it did before. Now, it's the PRP. You may have seen we've treated a few very high-profile footballers recently, and their return to sport has been very fast. We're talking about better than half what their expected healing time was. And a lot of them reporting that they're really happy with the strength that they've got in the hamstring. Often, if you just slowly heal it, you also end up with muscle wasting. So you end up with a weak hamstring, whereas we're actually finding that the hamstring's healing at least as strong as it was before.
And then so with the XL therapy, what is the major differences? Again, I've come in and done a number of those, and we've shared some content online about it, but what is the difference between that XL compared to the PRP?
It is more expensive.
Roughly
3 times the price, probably 3 times the efficacy. And where XL comes in is really if you're doing several areas. If it's just one area, the advantage is not so large, unless it's a very severe injury, in which case it's essential. But the great thing about the XL is that we can do multiple areas at the same time. And when you're doing that, the cost isn't so much more because you're getting value out of 3, 4, 5 target areas, and allows you to do not just the therapeutic, which is the muscles or the joints, but also cosmetic, which is hair, face, well-being.
Now, we briefly touched on it then, but would love to hear some insight into some of these new ways of administering it. I know you've been talking to me a little bit about the nasal spray, which is super cool. The cream, I find it very, very fascinating, but not only just the way that can be administered, but the results that have been kind of coming back, particularly around things to do with the brain, right?
Yes.
So are you able to share a bit about that? And obviously, I'm sure some of it, is probably anecdotal or a bit more kind of like just experiences, not necessarily all backed up by 100% research yet, but it sounds like it's going to be.
Yes, this is the exciting field. So we love autologous treatment. We love getting it into your body, causing healing. But the only way we've been able to do it up until recently is by injection. So some people are a little reluctant to have needles stuck in them. So the first of the non-injectable delivery systems was actually ocular, the eye, drops made from PRP. So the market particularly for this has been the post-laser keratitis. A lot of people having laser therapy. And unfortunately, probably larger than reported number have pain afterwards, which is due to an inflammation of the lining of the eyeball.
Right.
So we're putting PRP eye drops into a syringe. Patients take it home and store it in the fridge, and they put the drops into their own eyes.
Wow.
And we've been doing that for quite a while, and we've had good results with that. So we're pretty excited about that because, again, it's the safety of this treatment. And it seems to work better than the regular lubricant drops, quite a bit better. The latest thing in the cosmetic space is PRP cream. You basically mix the cream with your fresh PRP. Again, the particularly after cosmetic treatment, so PRP onto the face. You can take your own PRP home and apply it to your face. But
is that purely just for pain, inflammation, and regeneration?
Well, yeah, regeneration. Generally, it's a cosmetic thing to skin looking younger.
Yep.
But I think maybe the most exciting, very new thing is intranasal PRP. And I became interested in it because we had some patients who, from overseas, it's been done. And we've been experimenting with ourselves, and particularly for loss of sense of smell, which is very common in my type of patients who've been hit in the head a few too many times, but also in people with long COVID. The loss of sense of smell is now really common. And so that's very important because I think we don't realise how important a sense of smell is. It's actually probably related to a lot of well-being things. We think that people with loss of sense of smell eventually become fat because they don't get the stimulation of the taste centres. And so it's a really good thing. And I've actually regained some of my sense of smell. And I'm quite excited about that, being able to smell things again.
It's always good.
That's pretty good. But the applications are quite large. There have been some animal studies showing regrowth of the olfactory nerve, which gives you your sense of smell. And, of course, the implications for other benefits through being able to cross the blood-brain barrier. And that's what we're finding is it does
because
get
whereas I think the listeners would be quite, I'm definitely interested anyway, like the nasal spray, like where is it ending up? As in you're saying it's crossing the blood-brain barrier. And I know, again, if you're happy to share, I think you mentioned to me a few other certain symptoms or cases where people were having improvements in other things in their sight, in a number of other areas that are obviously controlled by that section of the brain. So what is actually happening in comparison to when it's being injected into the, let's say the local site where it usually would be? What's happening when you're using the nasal spray?
Right. What really reinforces for me actually my confidence in this is that we recently had, as you know, one of the world's leading biohackers in, and I was able to discuss technologies, and this is actually being used by him and other people overseas. So we have no doubt that actually there is this ability to cross the blood-brain barrier and get some growth factors into that area where you can cause some regeneration. Now, we can't say that we're getting benefits for human beings in this yet because it's still small numbers in trials. There's some animal studies that are showing that you're actually getting some regeneration in the frontal lobe of the brain.
Nice.
Now, I'm really interested in the frontal lobe of the brain as a ringside doctor looking after boxers because we know that their damage is in the frontal area. And we know that COVID also had the ability to cross the blood-brain barrier from the nose into the frontal lobe. Right. And a lot of the bad things about COVID were loss of sense of smell, short-term memory destruction, and dysregulation of your hormone control, all of which happens in that frontal area of the brain just above the nose. So not only does it affects boxers, it affects people who've had long COVID. It also affects people who've been in car accidents and had trauma to the frontal area. So there's a large group of people, and if we're able to get some regeneration there, we're doing a big service.
You mentioned just then biohacking, which we're going to touch on in a second. In alignment with like, let's say biohacking and some of the things we're going to chat through, does this eventually become something that you'd be suggesting people use without issues, without anything that they're trying to resolve or regenerate? Like, is it essentially going to get to a point where, like, a PRP nasal spray becomes part of your daily supplement stack just because? Or as in, is more of a preventative more so than a reactionary thing?
Great question, and I think that's a maybe. I think it's a possibility. It's an emerging option. I don't think we can go out and recommend it on the basis of the current available data, but I think we can say it's a very exciting thing. And of course, it does lead into this biohacking well-being space where people are using it for well-being rather than to specifically treat injuries.
Than a reactive thing, Biohacking gets talked about a lot, particularly over the last few years, and with great reason. And we've had a number of really cool guests on the show who have come in and shared bits and pieces of their journeys of biohacking in a number of different areas. Before we touch on some of that, how would you describe biohacking to someone? I think it's a word now that gets thrown around a lot, and majority of people have no fucking idea what it actually means. It just sounds good to do with some stuff that they're probably doing in their morning routine. But what is biohacking?
Okay. For me, if you looked at preventative medicine, traditionally it's been go to the doctor once a year, get a cholesterol test, get put on a statin, go home, eat pizza, and do that once a year. So you've got one data point per year. With biohacking, we've got technologies now like the wearable technology, such as the Fitbit, the Oura Ring, and the other Whoops and Garmins and things like that. And it gives us 20 data points per day, every day, which means that our ability to actually measure well-being and then to look at how the different modalities of treatment for well-being are working or not working per the individual, it's enormous. I'm already starting to introduce this sort of data tracking into management of a lot of patients, but I think the real exciting field now is to incorporate into training. So we can actually, and I've found for myself, I have both episodes of overtraining and undertraining. And my Fitbit allows me to really look at...
To gauge the trends.
Yeah. It tells me whether to exercise or not. And I think the future will be people like you and I helping people who want better results to utilise, understand, and then plan their training so that you can get optimisation, which you can then measure through things like improved resting heart rate, improved sleep patterns. That it's all working.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much opportunity there, right? Because I think even if you go back a couple of years, even when it comes to body composition with our basics of nutrition and training, one of the most frustrating but most common problems that clients that I've worked with have had is just uncertainty of what they're doing is actually what they should be doing and whether or not the fuck it's working or not, right? And so I think the more of this data that we have, as you said, like it allows so much more clarity of like individualization of programming, of supplementation and whatnot. I think that's very, very important. You mentioned just then yourself, you've obviously been kind of dialing in a fair bit over the last, probably around 6 months, I reckon it's been since you told me you were kind of diving in with that. Before I get to that, I thought you'd find this interesting. Last year or the year before, I had Will Ahmed, who's the founder of Whoop, on the podcast. And I'm assuming obviously it would happen in the US much sooner than what it's going to happen here. But he was mentioning that they are very close to linking their software with the American healthcare system. So as a doctor, you can essentially go on and go to your patient's profile or whatever and have that back end data before the patient even comes in to really be able to see like what the trends have been. And, even to the degree of getting a warning of like, hey, you're about to have a stroke or you're having a stroke or you're about to have a heart attack and like just so much data that allows people so much more clarity, right? So before we get to a lot of that, for yourself personally, what have you kind of noticed the most over this last 6 months since kind of getting into really good routine again with your own health and fitness, and what data have you been relying on or what data have you been using throughout that period? I think the first thing is actually measuring data leads to altered behaviour. So I'm actually more motivated. There's actually been, sometimes I'm competitive and I compete against my Fitbit. But basically it's like, so sometimes I'll exercise just to get my numbers up for the day. Gamification.
Gamification is a great phrase, So it's gamifying my health. The number one thing for me has been my resting heart rate, which I've been able to track as it's improved month by month. I'm really happy about that. I've also found that in the past, when I used different types of supplements, I was really unable to really tell if I felt better. But I'm able to see numbers now where a modification here or there definitely leads to improved deep REM or resting heart rates. Heart rate variability is another measure that I'm looking at. And I think a really important thing is my ability to communicate with patients about this sort of stuff now. One of the commonest things that we have is people coming and saying, I'm feeling tired. There's an epidemic of fatigue. A lot of reasons for that.
Yep.
Now, one of the problems is sleep patterns. And I, for myself, didn't know whether I was sleeping well because you're unconscious at the time. A lot of people, their goal is to be unconscious for longer.
Yep.
And once you start to data track, the goal is not how many hours I'm in bed. It's how deep and restful that sleep is.
How much restorative,
and how it's helping me get better readiness scores, better resting heart rates the next day. And this is really good as a doctor because, of course, I get upset with the number of requests from patients saying, give me a sleeping pill because I just can't sleep.
Yep.
And so I find this is a great way of saying to people, listen, the goal is not to be unconscious under the effect of Valium. The goal is to be resting.
Restorative.
In deep sleep. So now let's talk about supplements that are healthy for your deep sleep. And that's a much more pleasant conversation to have, actually. And I find people accept that. If you just say, I don't like sleeping pills, it's really a bit of a conflict.
Yeah.
But if you have a common goal, which is to get better restfulness and better energy during the day.
Correct.
And then you get the patients to data track.
Yep.
Then you win them easily because you can show, well, look, magnesium, melatonin, these things are giving you better quality sleep.
Yeah.
You're getting more out of it.
Yeah, it's it's very hard to understand what needs to improve if you have nothing to show you what's not, where it should be essentially, right? So I think with the biohacking stuff too, I want to touch on some of those different modalities or different ways of biohacking and the effectiveness of them. But having some data points now, right? Like let's say someone's wearing a Fitbit or a Whoop or whatever they're wearing. A very common trend is people changing everything at once, right? And then going, oh, fuck, it worked. But it's like, well, what worked? There was 5 different things you just weren't doing before that you are doing now. So do you have any recommendations or advice for people in terms of how to actually, read the data in a way that's actually reliable instead of just going, oh, I think this is working, but there was also, again, 4 or 5 new things you've just introduced. So how are we really to know which one's having any effect?
Yeah, great question, because what you're describing is a real life experience that I have often, and that is, we've got some people out there who are already biohacking a lot, and some wake up in the morning to receive their overnight data and what caused this improvement, doctor. Exactly what you're saying. Often there's several changes that have been made. And I think what it is it's long-term data collection gives you the answer. So a lot of people will make several changes at the same time. We can't change that. And it's not a bad thing. But then I think what you do is you just try reducing the number of changes that you're making. Track the data for a while. And I think this is where long-term data tracking really shows through.
For sure.
But yeah, it's a common experience. And I think we're all learning on this journey. But you know what? You can't really, when someone's got this enthusiasm bug, they're trying the ice bars, they're trying the infrared saunas, they're trying the hyperbaric oxygen. Which one of those is working? It's really hard to measure.
Of course.
You've got to remove one modality, put it back in again, see how the data changes. And of course, the thing that makes it extra hard is that we all have good days, bad days, good weeks.
Of course.
And I've been really interested at how my data allows me to see that I've overtrained or see that I've had a virus. And of course, you can see these, it's not a straight line curve, it's a sine wave. There's ups and downs. And so picking how little things change, it's not always easy. But I tell you, when you do see the change, it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
It's been interesting, even, or probably more so with female clients in particular, even like starting to, when we've got this data, being able to go, okay, well, a week before your cycle, this is what usually happens. When you've got your cycle, this is what usually happens. And so to your point before, it allows us to make very educated decisions around whatever, their nutrition or training loads, understanding why their sleep quality might have been average that week. And so the next question I've got is around, and again, I think, and I'm keen to hear your opinion, like if someone's doing something and they're getting a positive effect and it's realistically just placebo, they're still benefiting, right? Regardless of whether it's placebo or not. But from the data and from your experience, like what are the most effective or recommended modalities of biohacking at the moment? If we talk about things like infrared saunas, obviously cold plunge and ice bath is a big topic over the last couple of years. We've got the red light therapy, hyperbaric chambers. There's just so many different things that people can do. Do you have any recommendations or advice in terms of where to start or what people should be kind of investing their time and money into if it is an option for them?
Yeah, look, I think we've got AI-generated data now on the really big changes, and some of the things are still very simple. All the scientific data says that the number one thing is Mediterranean diet.
Yep.
Okay. And so now what exactly constitutes the Mediterranean diet and your lifestyle? And it's obviously partly it's the fresh food, fish, omega-3s, but there's also components of exercise, sunlight exposure, and community support, which are all go along with that. I think it's part of the Mediterranean lifestyle thing. So that's where the science is. And of course, next comes exercise. Exercise is far and away the intervention that leads to better outcomes.
For sure.
Particularly, as you might have been aware, of some of the recent studies showing particularly racket sports, sports that involve some social interaction like tennis, table tennis, they're getting really good data. We've always known aerobic and strength training leads to longevity, but it seems that when you combine it into some of these sports, even better data.
Yeah, well, essentially you're having to think a lot more too, right? You're getting a lot more activation of the brain in a sport like that, coordination and whatnot.
Quite possibly balance as well is really important there. Yeah. After that, we know that vitamin D is really where the data is. Quite extraordinary. Not eating junk. And then next on the list is good night's sleep, good quality sleep. So it's lower down the list that these new biohacking things come in. And I think, the list includes ice baths, which has probably been around longest, has the best data. Infrared saunas are getting good data now, hyperbaric oxygen. And particularly, we're interested in hyperbaric oxygen because it's a preparation for PRP.
Of course.
So we've got data that you end up with better quality blood, with more stem cells in it, better growth factors, if you prepare better before you have your PRP, which includes things like being fasting, doing a short amount of exercise, hyperbaric oxygen, and infrared saunas. So all these things lead to better PRP.
What's your opinion on, I want to talk about the cold plunge for a second.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of data to show cold plunge in particular. Like obviously, like let's say we've gone and done a resistance training session together. We actually want the inflammation, right? We've got the slight micro tears in the muscle. We've got the muscle damage, which is how we continue to build and increase that lean muscle tissue. How much of a negative effect is it going to be having if someone's finishing their strength session and then jumping into cold plunge straight away in terms of the recovery process and the growth process? Is that something that you've kind of put much time into or have much awareness around?
That's one of those I'll go and have to look this one up. My gut feeling is that you won't impair your recovery at all by doing an ice bath. That's my gut feeling, but I haven't actually seen a study on that. Good question.
That's one for next time then. This just come to my mind about the PRP stuff. I'm going to quickly backtrack and then we can come back to where we're at now. Do you see it ever getting to a point, let's say with athletes in particular, where they would be injecting PRP in certain areas, like obviously hamstrings is a very common one, soft tissue injury. Is there any benefit, do you think, to having a PRP treatment without the injury in the first place in terms of being able to strengthen it or build those protection mechanisms even more so prior to injury?
Great question. And we're actually past the point. So it's a while ago that this issue arose. And actually, as a PRP advocate, I'm a bit cautious how we answer that because the question really is, can PRP enhance performance? Now, I'm really cautious about answering that because if it enhances performance, the question is then, should it be banned?
Yeah.
So then we go, well, do we want to ban something that's natural and safe?
Well, if it's your own blood.
And there's a really fine line. And of course, we have every mandate to inject PRP into an injured area. The question is, do you inject it into an area that isn't injured preventatively? And of course, that's quite reasonable. We get that with osteoarthritis knee.
Yeah.
I've got one knee with osteoarthritis and it's symptomatic. The other knee, it's done the same number of kilometres but doesn't hurt. That's easy to answer. Yes, preventative, we're there. And what you're looking at really is almost, does it cross over to performance enhancement? And in fact, there's rules in play.
Because would it be somewhat similar to EPO?
Yeah.
I mean, but you're
not
also
so much
not
EPO. I think you're looking more like growth factors.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's going to improve aerobic performance at all.
because you haven't necessarily added any extra blood, any extra blood cells. You've just re-injected the ones that were already there, I suppose.
Yeah. But what we're seeing is that some of the recoveries are so good that there's actually in one of our recent podcasts, it was one of our footballers actually said he thought it might be stronger than it was before. So the recovery is very good. And we do know that some athletes have been thinking that their performance was actually better. But we're really cautious about going into that space. There are rules at the moment.
Don't want to shoot yourself in the foot. And
we don't really
lose
want to see
half your customers.
PRP banned. It's like, although actually, historically, one interesting thing is I started anabolic steroids a long time ago, before it was banned.
Yeah.
And it was interesting that one of the negatives of it being banned was a massive increase in its use. Go figure. Yeah, anabolic steroids way back in the 70s were not established as proven as actually working. Before it was proven that they worked, really proven, they were banned.
They were banned.
Once they were banned, everyone assumed they worked.
Yeah.
and there's a massive increase in use.
Yeah.
I know. So we don't really want to go there because we don't really want PRP to be banned for athletes. Of course, the vast majority of our patients aren't athletes. They're little old ladies with crook knees and tradies with sore elbows and sore shoulders. But there's this small part of the field which is athletic performance. The current rule status is that PRP is banned in large quantities. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, it's already the case. You can't use more than about 100 mils of PRP.
Right.
But actually, we never do.
Yeah,
so it's really not an issue.
Okay.
But I think the authorities already recognise that large dosing with PRP could be enhancing.
Yeah,
the question is small dosing. Yeah.
Have you seen a friend of mine or a guy that I met through early days of my career? I was training Michael Klim and become really good friends with Klimmy, and he introduced me to a former competitor of his, Brett Hawke. So I think he had the world record of the 50 metre at one point in time. And he is now heading this enhanced games. Have you seen much about this recently?
I've heard about it, yeah.
What's your thoughts on it? I mean, because from what I can see and the stuff that I've looked at, obviously these competitors now will no longer be able to go and compete in things like the Olympics and World Championships and whatnot, of course. But it seems like it's very, very data driven and getting done and administered in a way that is as safe as possible. And it's pretty bloody interesting to watch, to be honest. Like, I mean, I watched one of their clips the other day of I can't remember the athlete's name, but he'd had a very great career as a natural athlete, obviously in the Olympics and whatnot. But he ended up breaking his PB across the 50 metre and got a world record, obviously enhanced, but world record in the 50 metre swim, like after going through whatever protocols they've been using. Like, what are your thoughts on that? And do you think that is something that will eventually expand to other sports where you've got these federations that are essentially untested?
Yeah. Look, a couple of days ago, I caught up with a ex-Tour de France cyclist.
Yeah.
And to be bluntly cynical, the Tour de France, which is an unenhanced sport, probably didn't have very many unenhanced athletes.
Yeah.
You've seen the Lance Armstrong story.
Of course.
It seems to have been that a lot of our traditional sport is about not getting caught. rather than actually embracing the values. So we do know that there's been a lot of cheating out there. And in fact, there's some really fine lines, aren't there? I mean, one of the fine lines is hypoxic training. So it's forbidden to use EPO, but hypoxic training you can do.
Yeah.
And we know a lot of athletes do effectively get that stimulation by going to Hawaii, racehorses in Zimbabwe, compete in South Africa.
I think what's going to be interesting is, let's say they do it for athletics, right? I'm sure eventually they will.
Yeah.
What's going to be interesting is when they start doing it for athletics and the times are exactly the fucking same. And then everyone's starting to go, oh, maybe we should start asking questions about the ones that aren't enhanced.
Yeah, that's right.
You mentioned before you've had a little bit to do recently with someone, quite a big name in the biohacking industry.
Yeah.
What did you gauge that he was most excited about, over the next kind of few years, and to follow that up, what are you most excited about in that world?
Yeah.
Obviously we've spoken a lot about the PRP and how exciting that whole thing is. Like, is there anything else that really sparks your interest at the moment?
Yeah. Look, I think the intravenous cell therapy.
Yep.
I think that's exciting. I think data tracking comes up every conversation like this, and of course, your top guys are data tracking to the max. I think we're all looking at supplements. I think one of the areas that I've recently become interested in is amino acid use.
Yeah.
I've had my amino acids today before coming in here.
Essential or non-essential, or both?
Yeah, things like creatine, citrulline,
sorry, as in like, okay,
taurine.
So, gotcha. Yep.
Which are very safe, not expensive.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think those are the new areas, and particularly we overlap on this field of intranasal. Yeah.
You mentioned to me, I think we were having a chat maybe last week, we were on the phone and you were talking about the fact you'd been using some citrulline recently, and I know you just mentioned it just then.
Yeah.
I told you about how we use that in our pre-workout supplement with Unify, but had you done much research on citrulline previously, and what effect have you found? Obviously, it's been a short period of time, but what effect have you found, supplementing with citrulline? Because you're using it on its own, right?
Yeah.
Not in another product, just citrulline by itself.
Citrulline.
Yeah. What have you found?
Well, look, the number one thing I found was improvement in my resting heart rate overnight.
Yep. Okay.
I was really, really happy with the significant change there. And also, I suppose, blood flow issues.
Male blood flow issues.
Could be, yeah. I was thinking of that. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
With your clinic down at Shoresell at the moment, obviously, I think after we did our first one, we had so many people kind of reaching out, actually now understanding what PRP was. Like, what is the trend kind of been over the last 6 to 12 months in terms of what you're getting people coming in to see you for most? Like, obviously PRP, but are you getting more of a shift into the XL stuff yet?
No, we haven't been. It is growing. It's growing slow, but we've not been marketing it, actually. That's, in a way, maybe our own fault. I think the biggest shift, actually, that I'm seeing is increased fatigue.
Yeah.
We're getting a lot more well-being related issues. Yeah. And, of course, the other big shift we've had is the footballers.
Yeah.
So we'd always penetrated the martial arts type of market, but now the footballers are aware of it. That's the big change. But in terms of, there's not a huge change in what we're actually doing year by year. I think the biggest single change for me is how people hear about us.
Yeah.
So for a long time it was word of mouth.
Yep.
But now we're getting a lot more support from professionals, chiros, osteos, orthopedic surgeons. And it's quite common that we see professional referral.
Yep.
And now for the first time we're starting to see Instagram.
More social media.
More social media, yeah.
For someone listening at the moment, whether they're an athlete or someone who just is a regular exerciser, we mentioned things like fatigue and a bunch of other stuff around the biohacking today. What blood markers or what hormone, panels do you feel like are beneficial for people to have awareness of? Because it's crazy to me, like how many people I speak to who can't remember the last time they ever got their bloods done to see what their levels are at, whether it is your vitamin D, whether it's iron, testosterone, whatever it may be. Like, is there a certain list, I guess, that you would recommend people really stay on top of?
Yeah, good question. I think vitamin D, of course, is the number one. Albumin is the one that a lot of people don't know about.
What is it called?
Albumin.
Okay.
Albumin is part of a liver function panel.
Right.
And when you have great well-being, the albumin level is actually elevated. When you're inflamed, sick, eating bad, virus, albumin levels plummet.
Right.
So albumin is a great biomarker.
Yep.
Male hormones, they're important.
The male hormones, like, sorry to interrupt you, like we briefly touched on it in our last chat. We spoke about TRT. I think you referred to it as testicle replacement.
Testicle replacement therapy.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
How long, so like, let's just say, just random example, let's say you've got a bloke who's, early 40s, right? Who's just started to get some awareness around what his hormone levels are at. And I've been getting a bunch of these questions from clients and people who are essentially wanting to work with me as well. But like, let's say their test is quite low.
Yeah.
How long of a period of time are you allowing for to make changes to as many lifestyle factors as possible first to see how much of a difference that makes in their testosterone before they decide to go, all right, ideally getting it administered, properly by someone, but like before making a decision to start using, exogenous products, supplements?
Yeah. Look, we live in a world where unfortunately everyone's looking for the instant quick fix.
Correct.
And I actually love working with people who aren't. And I think we're lucky at our clinic in that we do attract people who are more inclined to want to do it autologous, natural, healthy. But I still do get consults with people. Typical consult goes, someone says, I've got low test and all my mates are feeling like they're brand new on testosterone. And I go, all right, but your testosterone levels are actually normal when we measure them, and maybe we should look at your sleep. All right, so maybe data track, maybe look at magnesium, get you better sleep, have more energy during the day. And then
that takes
replies, and take testosterone as well, huh?
Yeah.
No, let's look at this. But fortunately, we do have a lot of patients who are quite open to improving their exercise, improving their sleep, improving their food. And I think if someone's motivated to do that, I think it's about 3 months is the answer to your question. So you can work together and get better outcomes.
Yeah.
But of course, there's this psychological thing out there. Some people have a belief thing that the one and only solution to all the world's problems is testosterone.
Exactly right.
A bit more complicated than that.
Yeah, 100%. Mate, I wanted to also kind of like take the opportunity in the chat today as well, just to express my gratitude to you for the help that you've been giving me over the last few years, and I've learned a shitload from you. And again, even from the podcast last time, we had such great feedback. A bit of a different question for you, more so than a bit more of the personal side of things. Like, I'm curious to hear, like, what are you essentially most proud of within the business or even within your own personal accomplishments up until this point? Because anyone who's ever come across you obviously knows that you work your ass off and you live and breathe it. Do you ever take much time to stop and kind of just look at the amount of success or growth that you've had in your life so far? Yeah. And like what really kind of,
Yeah, I guess the mission over the last 15 years has been to get the word out there about PRP.
Yeah.
And the first 5 years of that, we were functioning without a lot of scientific data backup. And I had the experience of a lot of the experts telling me that I was in a space that lacked any science and didn't work.
Yep.
And indeed, there's still a few orthopedic surgeons out there with that opinion. But I think we are basically winning the battle. And we're winning it because of so much scientific data now supporting. But more importantly, I think the conversation has been PRP for common injuries. And I mean, let's face it, osteoarthritis knee is one of the single biggest debilitating causes of premature death that's out there in the community today. I think an anecdote is I had a patient from the other side of town came in to see me a couple of weeks ago, and he said, I can't believe it, Doc. On 3 consecutive days, 3 different people who didn't know each other all said I should come to Morven and get some PRP. So I think the word is spreading to a lot of areas that PRP is valid.
Yeah.
And it's just this sort of crazy space of being told that I was mad for so long and having a absolute faith
certainty
in the data that I was observing, particularly my own patients getting better. I think there's a validation there that I think we're on the winning side. And we're seeing it. We're doing a lot of training of doctors. They're coming to our centre because I think we do more PRP than anywhere else. So it's a great place to train. And we're getting more doctors coming in. I'm finding that very rewarding, teaching others. And I think that's where we're going to move in the future.
Beautiful.
And also we're seeing it in, we actually sell PRP equipment, particularly the tubes. And we're seeing the sales of tubes exploding.
Yeah, good.
And we're also seeing companies that are distributors now starting to offer PRP tubes as a standard product.
Right.
And that's really good.
That's amazing.
We're very happy about that.
Yeah, you should be, mate. Again, what you do is incredible. You help a shitload of people, and as I said, it's very inspiring to see not only your work ethic, but probably more so in particular, like you just mentioned, like just the consistency of the message and the value that you're putting out there to so many people. And so, mate, I appreciate you coming in again today. It was awesome. I feel like every time we have a chat, now I'm already starting to think about how much more we can talk about next time. But yeah, really appreciate your time again today, Dr. Peter. And for everyone who's listening, if you have gained some value from the episode today, which I have no doubt that you would have, we'd love for you to share this episode with someone that you care about or share it on your social media. I'm going to have the links to all of Peter and Shaw Sales websites and Instagram and whatnot in the show notes below. If you're heading in for a treatment, make sure you let him know that you heard the podcast. But I appreciate it, Dr. Peter. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks very much for having me.
Pleasure.